Just what is the 44th president hiding? Follow me down the rabbit hole about Barack Obama. Hello, friends, and welcome back to the rabbit hole. I'm your host, Danny, and today we're talking about Barack Obama. I know I teased this when I did the Michelle Obama episode, and I know you guys have been waiting for it. And I actually went to Patreon and I let them vote on the next episode. I told them after Pizzagate, they get to pick the next episode, and then I lied to them because I put out the Franklin scandal. So I hope you guys all enjoyed that. But I could not put out Pizzagate without the Franklin scandal, so thank you, Patreon, for being patient with me. If you guys want to have a say in what the next episodes are, all you have to do is join Patreon. And before we get started, I like to thank Wise Wolf Gold every single episode, guys. They sponsor me. They help me get these episodes out for you all. So check out rabbithole.gold. You can get precious metals, gold, silver for super cheap, like $50 a month subscription. It comes straight to your door, so you don't have to actually go anywhere. It's kind of fun. So check them out. Thank you for always supporting me. I appreciate you guys. And last thing, I know I'm putting out a lot of announcements today. If you want merch, there's always a link to the merch store in the bio, or in the show notes, excuse me. So if you want merch, go down there. It will be a great present for that conspiracy theorist in your life, the rabbit hole. Also, if you are a designer, I am currently open to taking designs for new merch. So I want to put out some really fun things, but I am not very good at designing merchandise. So if you have a design idea, send it to me at rabbitholeconspiracypodcast@gmail.com. Thanks, guys. Let's jump in. That's enough announcements for now. So, Barack Hussein Obama II was born on August 4th, 1961 in Honolulu, Hawaii. His parents were Barack Obama Sr. and Ann Dunham. Barack Sr. was 27 and he was from rural Kenya. He had actually won a scholarship to study in the U.S. and eventually became a senior economist in the Kenyan government, like later down the road. Anne grew up in Kansas. She spent some time in Texas, went to Washington State a little bit before her family finally settled in Hawaii. The pair actually met in a Russian language class at the University of Hawaii and were married in less than a year, and about 6 months before Obama was born. Anne had only been 18 when he was born, while Obama Sr. was 27. So, quite the age gap there. And just a few weeks after Obama was born, his mother moved him to Seattle, where they lived for a year while she attended the University of Washington, which I cannot imagine. Like, you have a brand new baby, you're moving to a brand new state. I mean, maybe she had been there before, to start school, and you have no help around you. Like, good for her, man. Like, honestly, good for her. All the while, so Senior was still attending school in Hawaii. Like, he did not leave. He did not go to Washington with her. He stayed in Hawaii because he was finishing up his undergrad in economics. And then he continued his education at Harvard University, where he earned an MA in economics. And Anne, after she spent her year in Seattle, she returned to Hawaii. And in 1963, she met Lolo Sotoro. He was an Indonesian East-West Center graduate, and he was studying geography. They met. She kind of had the hots for this guy. So by 1964, Anne and Obama Sr. divorced. Plus, they were never together. So, like, she went up to Washington, he stayed in Hawaii, and then she comes back to Hawaii and he goes to Harvard. Like, they're never together. And Obama Sr. hasn't really been in Obama II's life at this point because he went with Anne. I mean, that's more important, right? If he's breastfeeding or whatever, it's really important for the mom to be with the baby. But yeah, anyway, their relationship did not last. So Senior went back to Kenya, where he remarried and he worked for the Kenyan government, like I said. And Anne and Lolo married in 1965. Lolo was only in the U.S. on a visa, and he had to return to Indonesia in 1966. So about 16 months after he went back to Indonesia, Anne and Barack followed him to Indonesia. So Obama lived with his mother and his stepfather in Indonesia for about 4 years. His mom had another daughter by that point, which was his half sibling, Maya, but he didn't stay there with them for very long because in 1971 he returned to Honolulu to live with his mom's parents, his grandparents. And this was actually the only time that Barack Sr. came back to Hawaii to visit Barack Jr., and it was for Christmas in 1971. Obama attended a private preparatory school on a scholarship from about 5th grade until he graduated high school in 1979. And while he was in school, he always went by the nickname Barry. And he did this actually even a little bit in college. Until he went to visit his family in Kenya, he went by Barry. And Anne, who had been living in Indonesia with her husband and her daughter, she did come back to Hawaii in 1972. And Barack Obama lived with her for a while because she was attending graduate school for anthropology. But she returned to Indonesia to be with her husband in 1975, and Obama chose to stay with his grandparents in Hawaii. After graduating high school, Obama moved to Los Angeles to attend Occidental College. He had a full scholarship to this school, so made a lot of sense for him. 1980, he made a trip to Kenya to visit his father, and this is when he stopped using his nickname Barry. He started going by Barack. I don't know if it's like something that happened while he was in Kenya, like maybe he felt like more connected to the name. Who knows? 1981, Obama made a speech calling for Occidental to participate in the disinvestment from South Africa. Later that year, after visiting his mother in Indonesia, he transferred to Columbia University in New York City. So he did 2 years in LA, and now he is going to do his junior and senior year at Columbia in New York City. He majored in political science with a specialty in international relations. 1982, when Obama was only 21, his father died in a car accident. He graduated with a Bachelor of Arts degree in 1983, and after graduating, he went to work as a financial researcher and writer at the Business International Corporation. He worked there for about a year before he moved to the New York Public Interest Research Group as a project coordinator. Again, he worked there for about a year, and then in 1985, he moved to Chicago and was hired as the director of the Developing Communities Project. He worked at this Developing Communities Project for 3 years, and this was like a group of churches that would help rebuild communities devastated by the closure of local steel plants. Like, this was really important to him. He worked a lot in minority communities. That was a very important thing for him to get in touch with his African American roots, and so he worked heavily in African American communities. In 1988, he traveled to Europe and Kenya, and on this trip, he met most of his paternal relatives. And when he returned back to the U.S. after this trip, he enrolled at Harvard Law School. He did have a full ride scholarship to Northwestern University School of Law, but he didn't take it. He went to Harvard. And I'm wondering if that's because like his dad went to Harvard and maybe he was like going to his dad's alma mater. I don't know, but it's interesting that you would give up a full ride to Northwestern, which is also a great school, to go to Harvard. But I guess if you get into Harvard, like you go to Harvard. I don't know. While he was there, he was selected as an editor of the Harvard Law Review by the end of his first year and the president of the journal in his second year. So him being president of the Harvard Law Review made him the first Black president ever at Harvard of this journal. And this actually gained national media attention. People are like, oh my gosh, look at this Black kid who became the president of the Harvard Law Review. Unheard of, especially in the 80s. And actually, this led to a publishing contract in advance for a book about race relations. Although the book did turn more into like a personal memoir, and it was called Dreams of My Father, A Story of Race and Inheritance. And that book wasn't actually published until 1995, but he started working on it in 1990 when he got this advance and he got all this media attention. He also was a research assistant for Lawrence Tribe at Harvard. Tribe is an American legal scholar. During his summers off, he would return to Chicago, where he worked at Sidley Austin Law Firm in 1989 and Hopkins and Sutter Law Firm in 1990. He met Michelle at Sidley Austin in 1989. She was his advisor at the law firm, and I kind of covered this when I covered Michelle Obama. They put the two together because they're both black, and they didn't really have anybody else that was black, and so they're like in the department. So by default, the two of them worked together. And then, lucky for them, it was a happily ever after, right? In 1991, Obama graduated from Harvard Law magna cum laude, and he took a 2-year position as a visiting law and government fellow at the University of Chicago Law School. And he also proposed to Michelle that year, so they were going to get married. After graduating, he returned to Chicago. That's basically where he wanted to live. That's why he kept returning there. And he became very active in the Democratic Party. After the fellowship, he taught constitutional law at the University of Chicago for 12 years. He also worked as a civil rights attorney, so he was still practicing law and teaching it at the same time. 1992, he directed Illinois' Project Vote. This was a voter registration campaign that had like 10 staffers and about 700 volunteers. They wanted to register as many unregistered black voters in the state as they could, and they were pretty successful. I mean, they got 150,000 out of 400,000 unregistered black voters. So it worked, and it especially worked because this project is credited for helping Bill Clinton win Illinois and the presidency in 1992. On October 3rd, 1992, he and Michelle got married. Due to his work on Project Vote, in 1993, he was listed as one of Crain's Chicago businesses 40 under 40. They're like, this guy is doing great. Check him out. 40 under 40. Unfortunately, after already losing his father, in 1995, Obama's mother died of ovarian and uterine cancer. In 1996, he ran for Illinois State Senate, and he won. While a senator in Illinois, he helped pass legislation that tightened campaign finance regulations. He wanted to expand health care to poor families and reform criminal justice and welfare laws. We kind of see the healthcare thing as a theme throughout everything that he does in office. I mean, we talk about Obamacare, but it really started back in the late 90s when he was just a senator in Illinois. The Obama girls were born in 1998 and 2001, and in 2004, he was elected to the U.S. Senate. During the campaign, he gained national recognition because he delivered the keynote address at the Democratic National Convention. So he was a rising star in the Democratic Party, which I hate to say because last week when I said he was a rising star in the Republican Party, it was Larry King and he was molesting children. But basically, Obama was the talk of the town when he was a U.S. senator. It seemed like he came out of nowhere. He didn't really, but to everybody, they're like, who is this guy? Like all of a sudden everybody likes him, right? In 2005, he moved his family to a $1.6 million house in Kenwood, Chicago. Mind you, at the time, the Obama's net worth was $1.8 million. Michelle was the primary breadwinner here. According to their income tax return, she made $273,618 and he made $157,082. So, but on their tax return, they claimed that they made $991,296 that year. So I know that like in 2005, his book, The Dreams of My Father, that really took off. And they did have some investments. It just feels like, I don't know, like how can they afford all of this? But I don't know. I mean, maybe I'm reading into it too much. Anyway, people wanted to know more about this guy. They were like, this guy, he's coming out of nowhere. We want to know about him. So his book deals took off. In 2006, he took another trip to Kenya. This trip garnered international media attention, and that year he published his second book, The Audacity of Hope. In 2007, he announced that he would seek the Democratic Party's presidential nomination in 2008. And he made this announcement at the old state capitol in Springfield, Illinois. This was the same place Abraham Lincoln served as a state legislator. But that same year, Hillary Clinton wanted the nomination as well. So they had to battle it out for the nomination, and he ran on this promise to bring change to the established political system. And it worked because on August 27th, 2008, Obama won the Democratic nomination for presidency. So then, now he's won his party's nomination. So Obama and Senator John McCain fought for the presidency. Because one of the biggest blows to Obama was that he was too inexperienced for the job due to only being in the Senate for one term, he chose Joe Biden as his running mate. Biden was a veteran senator. The campaign was expensive, but Obama raised hundreds of millions of dollars with a record number coming from internet donations. And this fundraising actually helped him to buy massive amounts of TV ads and organize grassroots movements in key states. And I remember this because I was still at an influential age when he was first running for president. And TV was a really big thing then because Netflix Netflix back then was sending you DVDs in the mail, and then you would return the DVD whenever you're done. So Redbox was really big, but you didn't really have all these streaming sites, so everyone was watching TV. So you would see an Obama ad over and over and over. I love the holidays, but with how busy they are, I'm always looking for ways to stress less. That's why I'm so excited to partner with HelloFresh. They help make mealtime manageable, saving you from searching for recipes and going to the grocery store. Just pick your meals and everything you need is delivered right to your door. I love that I don't have to make decisions day of, because usually I come home from a long day of podcasting and realize that I have no dinner plans and 2 hungry boys. There's always something for everyone to enjoy on HelloFresh's weekly menu. With 50 chef-crafted recipes to choose from every week, plus customizable options to make your meals just the way you like them, you'll be able to easily satisfy every craving. I am so excited for my HelloFresh box to show up. And ordering it was so easy, just a few clicks of a button. And I always thank myself for picking meals I know the whole family will love and letting my son pick one of the recipes out of the box. I actually like to hold 2 recipe cards behind my back and let him pick a hand, and he gets a kick out of that too. Get 10 free meals at hellofresh.com/freerabbit. Applied across 7 boxes, new subscribers only, varies by plan. That's 10 free HelloFresh meals. Just go to hellofresh.com/freerabbit. HelloFresh, America's #1 meal kit. Obama won the election with almost 53% of the popular vote, and tens of thousands gathered in Chicago's Grant Park to see Obama claim his victory. And on January 20th, 2009, he was sworn in as President of the United States. And then he won a second term on November 6, 2012, against Republican Mitt Romney. So during his presidency, Obama did a lot of things. I mean, everybody does a lot of things during their presidency. Presidents tackle a lot of different problems while they're in office, so I thought I would let him tell you what he felt was his greatest accomplishments. So, according to BarackObama.com, some of Obama's major accomplishments during his presidency were revitalizing the American auto industry, reforming the healthcare system to cover 20 million more Americans, putting the country on course for a clean energy future, and creating more jobs in America than any time before him. On the world stage, Obama's belief in America's indispensable leadership and strong principled diplomacy helped wind down the wars in Iraq and Afghanistan, disseminate al-Qaeda and eliminate the world's most wanted terrorists, shut down Iraq's nuclear weapons program, open up a new chapter for the people of Cuba, and unite humanity in coordinated action to combat a changing climate. Again, his words, not mine. I just figured I would go and get some key points for his presidency because I don't want to cover like we'll be here all day if we cover every single thing he did in his presidency. And also, we don't care that much. We're here for the conspiracies. Obama's presidency ended on January 20th, 2017, and he and his family then moved to a house in Washington, D.C. This was a bold move because he was the first president since Woodrow Wilson to choose to stay in D.C. after his term ended. And at first, the decision was to allow their younger daughter, Sasha, to finish high school, which, I totally get. But he did say he would not continue to be active in politics. On March 2nd, 2017, he was awarded the Profile and Courage Award from the John F. Kennedy Presidential Library and Museum. And the next month, in April, he made his first public appearance since leaving office, and that was at the University of Chicago. Later that year, in September, Obama partnered with former presidents Jimmy Carter, George Bush Jr. and Sr., and Bill Clinton to work on One America Appeal. This was to help victims of Hurricanes Harvey and Irma. And he hosted the first summit of the Obama Foundation. The Obama Foundation was founded in 2014. And their mission is to build active democratic culture where people are equipped and motivated to make change. They're actually building an Obama Presidential Center in the south side of Chicago, and this is where the headquarters for the Obama Foundation will be, but also it'll be like a library and like a gathering place. It'll be a bunch of different things all put into one building. In 2018, the Obamas signed a deal with Netflix to produce docuseries, documentaries, and feature films with their production company, Higher Ground Productions. That came about 3 months after they signed a deal with Penguin Random House for north of $60 million for their memoirs. For reference, Bill Clinton received $15 million for his memoir, and Bush Jr. received $10 million, and they didn't include Hillary and Laura when they wanted memoirs from those two presidents, but in this case, they wanted memoirs from both Obamas. Obama had also been paid quite handsomely to undertake speaking engagements, so he addressed Wall Street financial firms for a whopping $400,000. In 2020, despite stating he would stay out of politics, he endorsed Biden for president and criticized Trump for his mishandlings of COVID and the killing of George Floyd. Obama even made a number of campaign appearances for Biden, and later in 2020, his memoir, A Promised Land, was released. In 2021, a docuseries, Obama in Pursuit of a More Perfect Union, was released. He also started a podcast with Bruce Springsteen, Renegades Born in the USA. The podcast centers on their backgrounds, music, and their love of America. And to finish out the year, Regina Hicks signed a deal with Netflix and Higher Grounds Productions for a comedy series. And if you remember, I like to bring this up. I brought it up in the Michelle Obama episode as well. Higher Grounds Productions is the production company that helped to make Leave the World Behind, which was super eerie. I mean, they've made some other movies as well, and some documentaries, docuseries, all those different things. But they've made a couple like fictional films that don't seem that fictional. They seem like maybe they're foreshadowing something. In 2022, he won the Audio Publishers Association Award for Best Narration by the Author category. He narrated his own memoir, and so that's what he won that award for. And in June that year, Higher Grounds Productions signed a deal with Audible. He ended up winning another narration award. This time, it was a Primetime Emmy Award for Outstanding Narrator for his work on the Netflix docuseries Our Great National Parks. In 2023, he traveled to Australia as part of his speaking tour. While he was there, he met with the Prime Minister, and it's reported that he was paid $1 million for 2 speeches. Seriously? That's insane. He also declared that Israel must dismantle Hamas. In fact, he has been quite outspoken about the Israel-Hamas war and thinks that there's a lot that we should be doing about it that we maybe aren't. I don't know. In 2024, during Biden's campaign, Obama expressed some concerns about Biden's campaign viability after the debate with Trump. When Biden withdrew from the campaign and endorsed Harris, Obama backed him up with an endorsement 5 days later for Harris. He gave a nice speech at the Democratic National Convention, formally endorsing her, and he was with her on the campaign trail in October. He was also very critical of the Republican Party during this time, although I don't think that this is outrageous. Like, this is to be expected, right? He has been a major part of the Democratic Party for years, and the two parties don't typically see eye to eye. So the fact that Obama is critical of Trump or of the Republican Party, that should be expected. That should not be a surprise to anyone. And also, this doesn't really go with this episode, but I'm going to share it with you anyway. So I read somewhere that the Democratic Party, after the first debate between Biden and Trump, they were like, oh, dear Lord, Biden's not going to win this thing. We need to figure something out. So they were like trying to push him out. They're like, yeah, we see that you're running again, but we don't actually want you to run. So they were trying to figure out who they're going to run for the presidency that's not Biden. And so they told Biden, hey, like, you need to get out of here. Like, you need to withdraw your campaign. We're not going to back you. And so he, like, this is just something that I read somewhere and I don't have a lot of evidence. And it's not even in my notes. This is just out of my head. He basically has a big fuck you to the Democratic Party, was like, fine, I'll endorse Kamala, and then you guys will have no choice but to run her. And that's exactly what happened. I don't know if that's 100% true. I haven't really looked into it, but I heard that story. I thought I would share with you. Because then Obama was like, oh, okay, well, I guess we have to endorse her. Like, we have to look like a united front, you know? Because it's like a mommy-daddy situation. If my son comes to me and says, Mom, can I have gummy bears? And I say no. And then he goes to his dad, hey, Dad, can I have gummy bears? He says yes. Well, that's what's going to happen. You're not going to be a united front. Same thing with the Democratic Party. So they endorsed Kamala. And honestly, good for them for sticking together. But again, that is not what you're here for. You guys are definitely here for the conspiracies. So let's jump in. Firstly, we already talked about Michelle Obama being transgender in her episode. That was mainly what the episode was about. If you haven't heard that one, I will link it in the show notes. I'm not going to go over everything about Michelle Obama in this episode. That's not the point of it. So go check out her episode. But with Michelle being transgender, does that make Barack the first gay president? He already broke so many barriers being the first African American president. Like, honestly, would the world have accepted a gay African American president? The likelihood is probably not, especially in 2008, probably not. I don't think they could have done both. I think you could have been like a white gay president or a black president, but I don't think they were going to accept both. And I'm wondering actually if that's also why he beat Hillary, because like maybe the world wasn't ready for a woman president yet either, like for the nomination, I mean, in 2008. But if it is true that he is gay and Michelle is trans, then did they kill Joan Rivers for exposing them? So I went over this in the Michelle Obama episode, but I'm going to go over it again here because I think it's really important that you know about Joan Rivers. So on June 30th, 2014, a reporter asked Joan Rivers if we would see the first gay president. This was after she officiated a gay wedding. And she replied saying, quote, "We already have it with Obama, so let's just calm down." And then she added, "You know Michelle is a tranny." The reporter was taken aback and was like, "What?" And she clarifies, "A transgender, we all know." Just months later, on September 4th, 2014, Joan Rivers died. So she was suffering from a sore throat, a hoarse voice, and strained vocal cords, so they sent her for an endoscopy. And an endoscopy is when they use a scope to take pictures of whatever organ needs to be checked through your mouth. They send a scope down your throat to check it out. She went in for the endoscopy on August 28th, and all the complications happened on August 28th. She just didn't die right away. So officially, Joan Rivers died of cardiac arrest on September 4th because of the complications from her endoscopy. That's the story. Anyway, whether it's true or not, I don't know. There's a lot of speculation that the Obamas were behind her death because she was outing them for being gay and transgender. Moving on, just how many drugs did Obama do? And did he do these drugs while on duty? So I asked this question because he admitted to alcohol, marijuana, and cocaine use during his teenage years. But like, come on, who hasn't done that in their teenage years? But did he continue using drugs? It was Larry Sinclair's book, Barack Obama and Larry Sinclair, Cocaine, Sex, Lies, and Murder, that blew the top off of this crack cocaine scandal. So Larry allegedly met Obama in 1999. So remember that all of this is just Larry saying these things. He's just, he wrote a book. There's no factual evidence to back this up. However, just because like there's no like videos in 1999, like there's probably not a lot of videos, so it would just be somebody's story. So of course they could just be like covering this up to be like, Obama didn't do that, look at him, he's a straight-laced guy. Well, maybe he's not. I mean, like, honestly. So the night they met, they had drinks and Larry mentioned that he wanted to get some cocaine, and Obama was like, yeah, no problem, dude, it's just a phone call away. So then they got in the car. They drove a short distance to some location. Once they got there, Obama goes inside. Larry stays in the car. They're in a limo. And Obama comes back with an 8-ball of Coke. Like, cool. Awesome. Thanks, dude. So Larry instantly goes to town. He's like, yep, this is exactly what I wanted. And Larry had expressed to Obama that he was gay. He was like, yeah, I like men. Cool. And actually, old letters from Obama's like ex-girlfriend in college revealed that Obama stated that he liked having sex with men. And this was like in college, so 10 years prior to this interaction with Larry Sinclair. So while they're doing cocaine in the back of the limo, Larry starts to kind of like touch Obama's leg and kind of run his hand up Obama's inner thigh. And Obama's like, bet, dude. So he grabs the back of Larry's head and kind of like pulls it down towards his zipper, insinuating that he wants a little bit more. You know, like, hey, I just got you some cocaine, so return a favor for me. So Larry says that while he's going down on Obama, Obama pulls out a glass pipe and starts smoking crack cocaine. And then the next night, Larry was at his hotel and Obama showed up unannounced, walked in, and basically the same thing happened. So Larry was doing cocaine, and then he's going down on Obama, and Obama's smoking crack cocaine while the whole thing is happening. That is the story that Larry Sinclair tells. Whether it's true or not, again, I don't have the evidence to say that. And I do understand that, like, especially with very public figures like the President of the United States, people come out of the woodwork to say all kinds of things. And I think that we should believe them. We believe the women when they talk about President Trump and how traumatizing that was for them. We believe women when they talk about Bill Clinton. So we should believe this man when he is talking about Obama. That's just my opinion. I think that we should believe the victims. Anyway, let's talk about Obama's father, because this is a smoking gun, I think. So was his father really from Kenya, or was that just like a convenient cover-up story? Let's talk about Frank Marshall Davis for a second. So Frank Marshall Davis was friends with Obama's grandfather. So remember that he was living with his grandparents for a lot of his childhood. So Frank Marshall Davis was friends with the grandfather of Obama. And it is stated that he was a mentor and kind of like a father figure to Obama, but also Frank Marshall Davis was a communist. Davis spent a lot of his time in Chicago. Like a lot of his young adulthood to like middle adulthood was spent in Chicago before he moved to Hawaii in the late 1940s. But he was on the FBI's watch list because he was a known communist. Like everyone knew that he was a communist. So they were really watching him because remember, we're in the Cold War at this point and they're like, we don't want communists in our country. But he was also a writer. And he wrote for several different newspapers while in Chicago and in Atlanta. When he got to Hawaii, he wrote for the Honolulu Record. And in 1968, he actually wrote a pornographic novel under a pseudonym. Davis died of a heart attack in 1987 when he was 81. Anne was only 18 when Barack was born. Davis would have been 56. So is that why they hid it? Was Barack Sr. just a cover-up? So if you use like a photo morph tool and you put in a photo of Anne and you put in a photo of Barack Sr. and you like morph them together, you can see what their baby potentially would look like. So it's like a sliding scale. And so you can slide all the way from Anne's face all the way over to Barack Sr.'s face. And then anybody in between, you could be like, oh, that could potentially be their child, right? So they did this in a YouTube video. I linked it in the show notes. They did this with Barack Sr. and with Frank Marshall Davis. So they put in a photo of Anne and Barack Sr. and they did the sliding scale and compared it to Obama's face. And then they put in Anne and Frank Marshall Davis, did the sliding scale and compared it to to Barack's face. And he looks so much like Davis. Like so much more like Davis than he would Barack Sr. It's like scary how similar the photos are. And I get it, like genetics are crazy and you could look like a million different people, but they're very, very similar. And this could explain why Obama chose to settle in Chicago. Like that never really made sense to me. Like I get it that people can decide to just move to a place with never have lived there before. I get that. But usually when you move somewhere, it's because you've heard pretty good things about it and you know a couple things about it. Well, is this because Davis told Obama about his younger years in the Windy City and he was like, oh, it was so beautiful. I loved Chicago. Maybe. And this could also explain Obama's interest in the Harvard Law Review Journal because Davis was a writer and Obama never really was a writer up until he went to Harvard and he was like, oh, I'll go out for this journal. Well, he was, obviously very good at it, becoming the president. So did he get his writing ability from his father? But if Davis had that much impact on Obama, did he also have an impact on Obama's political beliefs? Like, it's amazing how families typically have similar political views. And yes, that isn't always the case in every single family. I get that. But if you respect someone as much as it seems like Obama respected Davis, then typically you embody a lot of their traits. I'm not saying this is just how it is in every situation. I understand that. But it is possible that a little bit of his communist views rubbed off on Obama, especially if him and Obama spent as much time around each other as it's said that they did. Is that why Obama shut down the space program? And in 2012, Obama actually met with the outgoing Russian president, Dmitry Medvedev, and told him, quote, "This is my last election. After my election, I will have more flexibility." To which Medvedev replied, "I will transmit this information to Vladimir," because Vladimir Putin was the incoming president. Which actually leaves us with a lot more questions, like, what are you guys talking about? What kind of flexibility? What are you going to do after you're reelected? And should we be worried about Obama working with the Russians? Or the whole Democratic Party working with the Russians? Like, should that be a concern for us? Just a question. And lastly, I want to talk about murder. We talked about the Obamas potentially being behind Joan Rivers' death, but what about a death closer to home? On July 23rd, 2023, Tafari Campbell, the personal chef of the Obamas, and he was also the sous chef when the Obamas were in the White House. He followed them when they left. He went missing from the Obama residence in Martha's Vineyard. He was pulled from the water the following day. It is said that when he went missing, he was paddleboarding and that his death was not considered suspicious because he had no external trauma or injuries. He was found about 100 feet from shore in about 8 feet of water. And he was reported missing from another paddleboarder who saw him go under the water and kind of like come up a little bit, like, he was trying to swim to the top, and then he went back under and then never came back up. So his death was ruled an accidental drowning. The Obamas stated that they were on the island that night, but they just weren't home. I mean, they could have been anywhere, right? Like maybe they were at a friend's house or out to dinner and their personal chef didn't actually have to work. That's why he was paddleboarding. I don't know. I'm making up excuses for them. But Campbell was found fully clothed with his wallet still in his pocket. Like, who goes paddleboarding like that? I don't paddleboard. I don't know. But everyone that I've seen paddleboarding, they are typically in clothes that can get wet because you're on the water. And usually, if you're on the water, you're not going to take your cell phone and your wallet. You're going to leave those things at home. And he was just off the coast, just away from the Obama's residence, which is where he also lived. So he would have just left those things in his room probably. It's just weird that they're in his pocket. And also, he fell off his paddleboard and didn't try to get back on. Did he have rocks in his pants? I mean, there are videos of Campbell from 2017 swimming in a pool, and he's a really good swimmer. The video shows him doing freestyle and backstroke, and his hashtag, he hashtagged the video and it said #survival skills. So, dude's a very proficient swimmer, and he just falls off his paddleboard and doesn't resurface. That's strange. And the thing is, Campbell isn't the only chef of a former president to wind up dead. The White House chef that had worked for both the Clintons and George W. Bush, Walter Scheib, drowned in June of 2015 when hiking in New Mexico. So he was actually found submerged in a mountain drainage flowing with surface runoff. But that's just a coincidence, right? He was out there, he was going on a vacation, he was hiking and he was fishing and he was just having a good old time. And then he was off the trail where people wouldn't have seen him because of all the foliage and trees and the rocks and all that. So it wasn't going to be easy to find this guy. And he was in this stream, face down, dead, drowned. He was drowned. That's very odd. But it's just, again, just a coincidence. Just happened to be that 2 of the chefs from the White House are dead now. I mean, we also have some evidence that Obama was involved in Pizzagate, so we can get into that. I did discuss this a couple weeks ago on that episode, and we kind of talked about there's a text or an email back and forth from a company in Texas, and they're like, hey, Obama flew in $65,000 worth of pizza and hot dogs from Chicago. Are we going to use the same place or whatever? I get that that's not a smoking gun. I get that. And I didn't call it a smoking gun then. It's not a smoking gun now. It's weird about the way that they worded things. If you haven't listened to that episode, it's a really good one. Also heartbreaking, so listener discretion advised. But, I mean, potentially he was involved in Pizzagate. But with Pizzagate, we don't really have any solid evidence at all. That's the problem. But there's also this video chat with Harris and Obama, and it seemed like it was probably before Biden took office, in which Harris asks Obama about Biden. She says, quote, so tell me about Joe. What do I need to know? What's the thing about the ice cream? And Obama replies, ice cream is big. Pasta with red sauce, he can go deep on that. Which is a weird thing to say. But, I mean, maybe that's just the way he talks. I don't know. Again, I'm not trying to, speculate. But if we remember from the Pizzagate episode, ice cream means male prostitutes. Pasta means young boy. And red sauce means orgy. But, I don't know. That's just a weird coincidence. Again, coincidence. Not only that, but Obama has been videoed with P. Diddy. In the video, he says he appreciated Puff Daddy for doing the kinds of works he was doing and that he doesn't have to do that. But maybe I'm just reading into things too much, right? This is all just speculatory. Strange. That's what we got for Barack Obama. I mean, he could have just been a great president. Or maybe not. Anyway, until next week, my friends, stay skeptical, and I will see you all then. Hey friends, The Rabbit Hole is an independent podcast with everything you hear done by me, Danny Mercy. I appreciate all of your support. Please rate and review wherever you're listening. If you want to follow us on Instagram, it's at rabbit.holepodcast. And thank you, Zakar Balaha, for our awesome intro.